Here is one tip for every single character in Deadlock. Maybe you're new to the game, maybe you're new to the hero, or you're coming back after some time. Hopefully this video will help you in any way, shape, or form. And if you like this type of content or want to see more, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, of course. But without further ado, let's dive straight in with Abrams. Now with Abrams, you can actually get a ton of extra momentum by using his shoulder charge, canceling it, and jumping towards the end of the shoulder charge. This allows you to carry momentum. You can do it against enemies, so while you're grabbing them, it'll actually carry the momentum. You drop the person, you're taking with you, but you carry the momentum so you can get out some pretty sticky situations. This is useful in a lot of different scenarios, and honestly, should be something that if you're playing Abrams a lot or you're trying to main this character, this should be your bread and butter, your staple of what you're trying to do with any sort of tech with this character. Now with Apollo, there's quite a lot of different niche tips and tricks with this character, but some of the basics are when using your one, you can instantly do a light melee into that, and I believe Apollo has one of the most damaging light melees. There's some other characters up there as well, but Apollo does have one of the strongest light melees in the game. So weaving in light melees whenever you use combos or any of your abilities is a great idea. Again, you can do one into a quick light melee. Also, you can use your ultimate to kind of bounce off of corners in different angles so that you can hit, extra speed, extra terrain, people behind walls, people above or below walls, everything like that. For instance, if I were to say ult here, and I'm not necessarily aiming at him, I'm aiming at this wall, and you still bounce over it. This is useful in a lot of different scenarios. If you have, people say behind this wall here, and what you would do instead of like ulting here, you would ult right here, just hitting this wall and you're bouncing off of it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So moving on to Bebop, there's a couple. There's of course the fadeaway hook, and then there's a side dash hook, which I like to do. Fadeaway hook is a dash jump backwards into a hook because it acts as if you're in the same spot and you go for a hook. Like so. Fadeaway, you gain some more distance. Then you have the side dash, where you just side dash and hook. A little bit harder, I would say, than a dash jump backwards because it's more about a timing thing and the aiming thing, and just moving your mouse a little bit more. But those are probably the two best tips for Bebop. There's some other niche tech that isn't necessarily needed, but those are, again, probably the two biggest ones I can give you. Moving down the list, we come to Billy. Now with Billy, there's a couple different things you can do with Rising Ram. One of them being that you can simply do a 180, a full just U-turn if you want to, by quickly whipping your mouse around, just like any other ability. One other interesting thing is that on the ground, you have all this control, but in the air, you have like perfect air control, like Lash's second ability fully upgraded, his grapple, which is pretty cool. Some other niche tech is you can like, sort of animation cancel his blast by weaving in a light melee. It's not necessarily a animation cancel, more of us like it's making the input look a little bit quicker. Whether it's actually doing anything is up for debate, of course. Besides that, typically you want to hold your ultimate and then use Rising Ram so you can catch people moving away if you're not using Warp Stone or anything like that. Just having the ability to try to catch people that are further away with the Rising Ram is a great idea. Now, the thing with Calico is with the Leaping Slash, they did some changes so it's a lot easier now, but you used to have to like be able to jump up and look down to kind of slow your momentum with the Leaping Slash so it would actually go to where you're aiming. But now all you have to do is look directly down, so if there's an enemy in front of you, you can swipe them like this, or you can just do the same thing with jumping. You can also, leap slash anywhere, that's practically it. And a big thing that I don't think a lot of people get or understand is that you want to always use your combo and everything like that when you're outside of Ava. So you go into Ava, then you look for your combo, so you get the extra damage. Is like one thing that I've kind of noticed, is because you gain amp damage over time. So you always want to be in your Ava form, looking for a pick and then going, is something that I don't think I see a lot of people do. They just usually roam around as Cali instead of going to Ava, which I think some people just don't really understand. I mean, there's not too much with Celeste. It's more or less like understanding B hopping. So you just
once you tap the ground, once you're about to tap the ground, you just jump. You're not holding W, because if you hold W, it kind of slows down the momentum. Sometimes you can get away with holding that W, but you typically don't want to do that because you have low grav on this character, so it's really good. Another kind of tip that I found really useful is never go for a dash jump, so never go for like this. Mainly due to the fact that you need your stamina on Celeste. She's already super fast and she has a ton of stamina, so you don't need to go for a dash jump, because when you go for a dash jump, you're losing a lot of stam than just naturally going around the map, because you can get an insane velocity without using the dash jump, which is pretty impactful. Now with Doorman, the guy that I hate, the person that should not be in this video game because he's absolutely filthy and disgusting. If you play Doorman, I hate you and you don't have friends. Okay, but basically there isn't a ton of tech. Some of the tech you're going to get with this is just like slowing hex someone before they're going to the door. Yeah, you can place the door and cart people into it. We all know that with the vortex web. Pretty self-explanatory. I mean, there isn't that much niche tech. I think that one tech is that when I first played this character for the very first time, I threw my bell and left it. You can throw the bell and shoot it and it explodes. I think is something that people might overlook if you're playing this character for the very, very first time. Another big thing is now you can actually dispel the cart. So people can dispel in that instance. So getting like an item like Curse and adding that on so you can insta-cart them so they can't use dispel is like a decent idea, I would say. So just keeping those small things in mind. Typically, you always want to move the person out of position. And then you want to go for the ultimate, so that they're out of sight of their team. They're not in a spot to where they can get help or anything like that, and they take that instance of damage and slow them down. This character is all about disorienting the enemy team and moving people to places where they shouldn't be. Now, I think moving on to Drifter, I personally think, yes, there's certain lineups you can do to teleport across the map, as you've seen in some other YouTube videos. That's perfectly fine. But I think the big thing with this character is his ultimates. Denying enemy vision in the beginning stages of the game is a huge advantage. You're essentially putting two enemies and they can't really do anything. In matchmaking, because a lot of teams and players are uncoordinated with one another and they don't stack on top of each other, using this ultimate whenever you can is a great idea. If you're going for an earn fight, if you're going for a gank, if you're even trying to save a teammate, it's a great idea to pop Eternal Night. Because believe it or not, you can still be kind of supportive as Drifter. Is your teammate 1 HP getting chased by, an enemy or two enemies? If you pop Eternal Night, it just gives him a extra chance of escaping. And honestly, if you use that to have your teammate not go 0-1, 0-2, 0-3, it's probably a good idea to use it. I think people need to stop being greedy with his Eternal Night and try using it for other scenarios and try to start thinking outside of the box with it. Using it whenever you can to save a teammate, get a pick, secure an objective are all great ideas. Usually most people know that by now, but I think just re-emphasizing it is a great idea. Moving on to Dynamo. Now with Dynamo, there's a couple things to keep in mind. The big thing is that you can grab people when they're trying to take into the urn and teleporting them, which is a good thing to keep in mind. There is some niche tech here and there. The same idea with Apollo is that you can one into a quick light melee right away because he has a fast light melee time. You have to be pretty much point blank for that and can be a little bit riskier. Another big thing is understanding his ultimate. I think trying to be not transparent when you're trying to go for the ultimate. Usually it's pretty easy to tell when a Dynamo is going to go for an ultimate if you've been playing for a bit, because he's going to be like kind of looking at you really weirdly, kind of sexually, depending on the circumstance, and he's going to try to go for an ult. I think trying to not be super telegraphed with how you ult are great ideas. Whether you're doing something crazy by like running away from the enemies and then going back with a warp stone, for example, is a good idea. For instance, let me grab a warp stone. The whole idea is just trying to be as unpredictable as possible. Again, so it's just like, just trying to be unpredictable and make it so that enemies can't give you a good read. Like I said, you can also quantum entangle people that are trying to transport the urn into the turn-in. So let's say a guy's here. with the urn. Can I give him urn? No. But essentially you just TP him into the capture point for the urn and you get that done. It's a good idea to do that. Also, Quantum Entanglement, good idea because it dispels non-debuffs. So if somebody has Jin's marks from Mirage, if they have any other sort of stack on them, going for a Quantum is probably a good idea. Just understanding your cooldowns are all the best tips I can give you with this character. And if you are a big fan of toothpicks, kind of really random, definitely check out Nature of Pine, where they got some awesome flavors for toothpicks. Again, definitely go check it out if you care about your oral health. Links, of course, are in the description. Moving on to Graves, there's not a ton to be said about this character. The one thing I would keep in mind, though, is buying rebuttal on this character if you want to be that person. And essentially, if you're in a 1v1 fight, typically you want to place the ult on top of you or pretty near you, and if they go for a melee onto your ult, you have rebuttal and you can go for those extended parries and those quick parries. Also, placing your ult in the middle of mid-boss when the rejuve is falling down and having rebuttal, this combo is extremely good as well, because they are either punching the tombstone, going for the rejuve, or punching Graves, and when you're inside of all those with rebuttal, it could be a pretty scary idea for the enemies. So just keeping this item in mind, even if you're not playing against super melee-oriented characters, you're not playing against an Abrams, you're not playing against a Billy, you're not playing against a Viscous, or like a Calico or a Shiv, whatever the case may be, just having this idea in the back of your mind of having rebuttal plus, your ultimate, something most people want to destroy with their heavy melee, is probably a good idea. So moving on to Great Talon, there's a couple things you can do. The first one is you can throw a trap and shoot your arrow. Once it's up and ready, once it clicks, once it does that animation, then you can shoot it. You can also curse somebody in the air, like that, which is pretty cool. Then a lot of people know. One more thing is if I actually head over to, this is a little bit scuffed, sorry. If I head over to Explore in my sea, and then for instance, if I no clip and I go all the way to the REM tunnels, I choose this tunnel because it's a little bit easier, but you can bird into REM tunnels. It's a little difficult, but whether it's practical or not is really up for debate. But sometimes there might be that one instance where you can pull this off and it'll be a massive surprise for the enemy if they're trying to rotate it around the map. So having this option available is just a good idea to think about the game from a different perspective. And the other big thing is to use the Spirit Snare, especially if there's like a 7 ulting and they don't have unstop or whatever the case may be, because you have to remember it applies a curse, which is pretty massive. So being able to curse somebody when they're least expecting it is a good idea. Now, the thing with Haze, there isn't a crazy amount of tech with this character. I mean, you have these small nuances, like you get the smoke tech, but that's nothing really crazy. They did come back and actually add sliding with ulting again, so I guess that's something to keep in mind. So if you start your ult and you can slide down to try to catch up to people that are trying to run away, so that's a good idea to keep in mind. Some other, I guess, tech is you can kind of sleep dagger and smoke bomb at the same exact time by using those two interactions, which is a pretty good idea if you're trying to be as stealthy and quick as possible. But that's really about it. There is I think there is one that you used to be able to do a slide into a punch and stay invis, but I think they've kind of removed that from the game because it's a little bit broken. But yeah, the two things to keep in mind, ulting and sliding, and then just essentially smoke bombing and sleeping at the same exact time. So you can get two abilities off at once to try to give you a better escape if you're getting chased. So those are the two things I would keep in mind. Now with Holiday, there is a ton of different tips and tricks with this character. I'm not good at this character. Like I said, there's a lot better players out there that can teach you Holiday. The one thing I would try to teach you if you're picking up this character for the very first time, and I made this mistake for the longest time, is that you could throw a barrel and if you quick melee, it instantly ignites it instead of throwing it out and shooting it. Now, again, I didn't know this. I even read this, and I read the melee part of the ability, and it just didn't register in my brain how to actually do it. But you just light melee after, and depending on if you're like looking down, it goes directly down. If you angle up a little bit, it'll go further. If you angle up higher, it goes further, and so on and so forth. And it's just understanding that you can do the light melee into that. But another big thing to keep in mind is if you do it too close to somebody and they understand that you're playing Holiday and they parry you, well, you're straight out of luck. There's some other niche tech where you can lasso people, throw a barrel, or throw a pad, and then I'm pretty sure you like throw a barrel and you do this and it blows up, right? So those are some ideas, but the big thing is barrel melee. And of course you have all of the air movement, kind of like Celeste when you hit the bounce pad as such. So that's the one thing I would try to keep in mind. So the thing with Infernus is there isn't too much tech. And it's just like, as long as you do a like dash roll into your ult, and then into 2, that's like essentially giving you maximum distance. So always doing a dash roll into your flame dash will give you the most amount of space possible. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory because you're adding a movement ability plus another movement ability essentially to gain further distances, because if you just did a flame dash normally, you wouldn't go as far. Pretty self-explanatory, but the whole idea is essentially that. Another thing to keep in mind is you always want to ignite the enemies and then put the napalm on. It's just to deal extra damage. You can also do the napalm into trying to get to afterbird proc, but the whole idea is you want to proc it because it adds more slow to stay on top. So then you press 1 and you're just trying to stay on top of them because you already got the proc of the afterburn. You apply the napalm so they're slowed, and then you just sit on top of them with the flame dash. That's essentially how to play Infernus 101. Again, not a ton of niche tech. It's just you can use all of your movement abilities. You can go for jumps to try to catch people in the air with your ultimate. So that's another good idea to try to get people up in the air. You can also go into zip lines, which is pretty cool, to try to get you more speed and more momentum. So those are some ideas to keep in mind, for some food for thought, essentially. So I guess the thing with Ivy is that when you read her ability is on flight, there's a cast time, right? If you pick somebody up, there is not a cast time. For example, if I self-cast, there's a small delay. If I cast to a teammate, it's instant, so that gives you some ideas. But I think the big thing with this character is just trying to stick on your teammates. Like, that's the tip or trick or tech, is trying to stick on your teammates once you have 2 fully maxed out, because you're always providing them with that replicated healing. You're giving the bullet life steal, you're giving the fire rate, and if you pair it with an item like healing tempo, like regardless if you're playing this character as support or just full gun or damage or spirit, I think getting a healing tempo just to enable your M1 carries is a great idea, regardless of, like I said, of how you play the character. There isn't like super niche tech. There's, like I said, you can insta-cast on somebody instead of just a small cast setup, and you can just pick somebody up. Like, people have talked about it before, I'm just re-emphasizing it again. And I mean, that's really about it. There isn't too much with the character. Now, the thing with Kelvin is that there isn't a ton of amazing tech out there, but I think the biggest tip I can give somebody if they're trying to play this character is, if you're playing Kelvin full support, which I think is probably one of the better ways to play the character because he's so good in that aspect, is having Rescue Beam is just an extension of Kelvin's full utility. And what I mean by that is, like, if you have a teammate in a terrible position, a good idea is to Rescue Beam them and then go for a dome on them. I think trying to pull your teammate out of like a very bad spot, if they're getting, grabbed by Bebop or just inflicted with a ton of damage, having the option to use Rescue Beam and then going for a dome is probably the best way to play this character. There isn't a ton of tech. Like, yeah, you can path around, and what you can do is, because the path acts as a actual object, when you're in mid-boss, for example, a lot of times you might see this in Night Shift, is Kelvins will actually like kind of path away on top of this when you have superior duration. to try to block entrances to the pit. Although it does go, like, over time it expires, but the idea is just to try to make it as annoying as possible for enemies to get in. So just trying to keep those small things in mind is definitely a way to propel yourself while playing Kelvin. And also, this is kind of like a open-ended video, so if you have any of your own tips, techs, or tricks, definitely let me know in the comments down below, as it's always nice to share some things. Unless you want to keep it, you know, locked away for yourself, which is perfectly fine. So with Geist, there isn't too many tips. The only one that I can think of right now is, I'm pretty sure this is still a thing. When you're having an enemy be above you for whatever reason, and you don't have your 4 maxed, you can see I'm here to swap, but it's easier to swap when they're above at an angle. I'm not sure what the idea behind that is. So having enemies above you on Geist is actually a good idea, which is kind of surprising because most of the time in third-person shooters, you want to have the high ground advantage because it's easier to shoot down than shoot up. But having an enemy above you on Geist for a swap is actually better, so you have a further distance. Besides that, I mean, just maximizing and understanding how much HP you're using per slash or per ability is some of the best ideas you can keep in mind. Is just knowing that you always want to be life draining while you're shooting no matter what. So recharging rush is a good idea because recharging rush restocks your 2. So just keeping that in mind. Also, play gun Geist. Do not play bomb Geist. Bomb Geist is not worth it in my eyes, because you just lose a lot of damage. But yeah, people above you, you can swap better. Now with Lash, I play a lot of Lash. So I guess the one idea is ZMC. People have noticed it before, or if you watch my Lash guide or other Lash guides, is the ZMZ Death Slam tech, where you're essentially crouch dashing off of a zipline and going for it. Let me turn this to a Kelvin, for example. Let me remove bots, as enemy, blah, blah, blah. So essentially, if you crouch dash off the zipline, you ult, you basically stall your airtime, and you keep moving like so. That's a ZMC. So you crouch dash off of the zipline, and then you ult, and it carries the momentum, but you stay in the same place, essentially the same level, which is pretty useful in a lot of different scenarios if you're trying to, you know, catch people off guard and such. Besides that, you have your basic combos, whereas you can kind of sync 3 and 1 together. So if you go 3-1, you can kind of combo those together. Use it as an animation cancel to your flog, which is a pretty good idea if you're trying to get a big burst of damage out, is flog 1. Because if you do your normal flog, there's a whole animation of you pulling it back and everything. So this saves you like a millisecond of time, and this is essentially like your one-shot combo, for example. If you're trying to do a huge amount of burst damage in a short minute, you just do flog 1 and like so. Besides that, understanding the movement of this character is going to be your next biggest tip or advantage to understanding the game in general. But yeah, ZMC, definitely a must if you're a beginner. And the flog combo, definitely a good idea as well. And then you can also flog 1 here like that, just nuke them even more. So yeah, with McGinnis, there isn't a ton of tech. I guess the one thing to keep in mind is that you can actually, when you have your ult upgraded, you can ult while on the zipline. You can ult on the zipline, which a lot of people don't understand when they're first starting out, which is, you know, understandable. It's not really specified. It's kind of its own unique status. So you begin your ult, then you hop on the zipline. You can't hop on the zipline and ult. It's starting it, then hopping on. Other thing is you can wall yourself, because you actually will go faster than the wall if I do fast stamina. You just have to time it correctly. If I'm not stupid enough. Like so. That's one tech, but besides that, it's just those two niche ideas. The character is a pretty fat chungus, so I mean, with Mina, there isn't a ton of tech. I guess the tip is, like, if you just read it, You can see the passive is holding causes you to briefly float. And you don't get that until you have it at least level 1. So with 1 ability point, you can float for a little bit. This allows you to add some more movement tech into everything. That's why you see a lot of Minas do that. And also, a big thing is going directly like this is rather slow. You can actually gain a little bit speed if you kind of wiggle your mouse a bit. It's the same case of B-hopping. You don't want to press W because you'll lose a lot of momentum. You actually just want to just do AD. So the same thing with B-hopping. Keeping that same movement. I guess also having level 1 Rake allows you to insta-kill tier 1 camps. So if I leveled up with 1 ability point, and I have, I don't know, let's say Extra Spirit and Mystic Burst, I just one-tap it. So those are some things to keep in mind. I think with Mirage, I mean, there's a couple things. Usually you're doing your Scarabs, and you always want to make sure when you're using your Scarabs to hit multiple enemy targets, you don't want to stack on the same person. They used to be able to stack on the same person, but now they don't. So you actually have to be aware of who has a Scarab and who doesn't. So if you're very low on health, essentially popping 1 Scarab, popping 2 Scarab is going to give you a ton more HP because you get plus 7 health steal per second, which is a good idea. Another big thing is you apply the mark, you pop it again. You don't have to keep shooting him. You can give it a second to get the little target indicator. Then you actually can pop him from super far away. So that's one thing, is that you don't have to be super close to apply the marks. As long as you get that icon, you can pop them from as further as possible. So if I keep going further away, it keeps proccing, I gotta get another target, I pop it, and it's a max stack. But again, the big thing is making sure you use your Scarabs on different enemies, not stacking it on one person, because it won't really do it besides refreshing it, because it's only plus 7 on that single individual. If I do 1 individual, 2 individual, now it's plus 14 a second. Another one, and so forth and so on, if you get the idea. I think another big thing is, some cool thing you could do is max tornado. You get 2 tornadoes, and getting an Echo Shard tornado essentially allows you to have 4 tornadoes. But the funny part is that they go higher and higher each time you hit them with the tornado. So you can really throw people off into really awkward positions, so just having that in mind is a good idea as well. With Mo and Krill, I think some of the little things I don't see a lot of players utilize is going through Rem's tunnels as Rem, or as Mo, because you can just burrow and go into Rem's tunnels. And I think this is a really good way of getting some extra boxes. You just have to be aware of your cooldown conditions and making sure you choose the right Rem tunnels so you don't get stuck in there. You don't necessarily get stuck, but it's just some ideas to keep in mind. Some other things is you can actually briefly cancel it. You can early cancel burrow into a mantle, a dash jump, or whatever the case may be. You can add a dash when you're coming out, like so. Just to give enemies a little bit more of a surprise. So you can cancel, kind of like Abrams, you can cancel early and add some movement tech, some flair to kind of be a little bit unpredictable. So those are some things to keep in mind. Again, the big thing, try to utilize the Rem tunnels. You get a ton of extra boxes, especially if there's no Rem on the other team. If there is a Rem on the other team, sometimes you can catch them off guard and kind of surprise them and maybe get yourself a bag. So definitely try to utilize. For Paige, I think the only thing to keep in mind, first, she's now a bucket 1, so she has the same, I guess, slide speed as like Mo and Krill and stuff, so that's kind of annoying. But if you don't have knockdown on this character, someone's up in the air, you can aim up and it goes up. It all depends on where you're aiming. Typically, you want to aim usually on the same surface as what your teammates are on. So for example, if my teammates are on the yellow lane on the ground, I want to be aiming at the ground. If I have a 7 in the sky on my team, or I have a Bebop in the sky on my team and I want to ult them and try to give them some more HP so they live longer in that ultimate, shooting it upwards is a good idea, or if you're trying to knock down enemies. Some other things to keep in mind is Paige, her heavy melee and melee scales on spirit. So if you start building spirit items like you typically do, for example, Great Expansion, Knockdown, Disarming Hex, Vortex Web if you want to, and so on and so forth, having the ability to go for melee, so adding an item maybe like Spirit Snatch, or adding a melee like melee charge are some ideas to add a little bit more damage to the character than what she already has, so you can be a little bit more useful and a little bit more reliant in team fights, and you're not just a cooldown, waiting for cooldowns to pop and such. So keeping those things in mind are great ideas. With Paradox, there's a couple things. First off, her pulse grenade goes through walls and everything. You should know this by now. If you're behind a wall, you're taking damage. Another thing is they recently added back her ultimate, the ability to slide with kinetic carbine and doing some other things. For example, so it slows down time when you actually go for a side dash, which wasn't doing that before. But yeah, you have to keep that in mind when you're trying to go for these aggressive shots, is that you freeze time while you're using your kinetic carbine, so you can take the time to line up your shot. Some other niche tips and tricks is you can do this, do a vortex web, and essentially, right, then you swap them behind a wall. You can also swap wall people, so like so. So you don't have to preset a wall and then try to go for a swap. If you're not comfortable in like pre-walling and then going for a swap, adding these two abilities together allows you to get the guaranteed wall, like such. So it's essentially pressing 4 and pressing 2 at the same exact time, like so. Pretty straightforward, so that you don't mess up your wall and you mess up your silence. Now with Pocket, he can also do the ZMC, but it's with a Mirage. It's just the same case with Lash and other characters that carry momentum with set abilities, like such. Pretty self-explanatory. And probably the reason why people buy Arctic Blast and buy Cold Front is when you're in your 3, if you press said button, it actually will also pop your Enchanter's Satchel. I used to unbind it, or cancel it so it actually apply, and then hit Arctic Blast. But the combo is you go into Satchel and you press that and it does double the damage. I'm stupid, I didn't know that for the longest time. I think another big thing, it's like the small things to keep in mind, is that if you're going to try to use your ultimate or you're going for a risky play, you want to pop your cloak before you go for the play, so that you have an escape and an escape as well. So it's going for it like this, and then you have that escape option. So Pocket is all about pre-planning fights, or pre-fight metagaming, essentially. It's just looking for opportunity, making sure you have an escape window ready to go, and just knowing how to use your abilities. Like I said, you can do the ZMC, just like how Lash can do it, and you can also do it with Affliction because it kind of carries your momentum as well, like such. So it's the same idea. So Rem, there is some niche ideas with Rem and some niche tips besides just farming centers, etc, etc. But if you queue up an item, for example, you queue up this in your quick buy, make sure you have auto buy. You can actually press 3 and you can actually, boom, you're in lane, you're fighting, right? You're in lane, you're fighting, and your little friend goes and buys Torment Pulse for you, and he brings it to you. Pretty cool. Also, Mexican Rem. But having and understanding that, this allows you to keep a lot more pressure in lane, so you don't have to take that extra time. You can also set it to do that, and you can go do something else. You can go into your little Rem tunnel, for example, but you're still buying. As long as you have... Oh, I pressed it again. As long as you have some LOS and you're within the range, you can pop it and do it. See, I'll queue up Healing Noble, for example. I go here, I do that, then I go into my Rem tunnels and I start farming again. It's just all about maximizing the amount of time and how fast you can do and rotate around the map. So being able to do that little thing will save you a lot of time, allow you to move around and gank, apply pressure in the map where it's needed, do damage, heal your teammates, whatever the case may be. You can also grab the abilities or the buffs as well. So just knowing that you can buy items if you have it queued up is really nice because you can do it from very far away. Now, guess what? Just like all of the other characters that has an ultimate or ability that keeps you airborne while moving, you ZMC, you can also do it with 7. Same thing, crouch, shift, ult, and you go flying into the air. Pretty useful for a lot of scenarios if you're trying to do a quick gank and you're just trying to get a ton of burst damage, or you're going into a fight and want to the best possible chance of surviving, you can do that. In terms of other 7 tips or tricks, I guess the big thing is just understanding where you're stunning people so you can actually properly place your lightning ball, and just knowing certain sweet spots or knowing certain areas where you can put your lightning ball. For example, if you place your lightning ball on a wall, angling it so it's static on a certain area so that if enemies are walking past it, it keeps damaging them, because this goes until it starts doing damage to enemies. Once it starts doing damage to enemies, it slows down. So if you're able to maintain it in a certain spot and try to kind of force enemies to fight in a certain general area, it's probably a good idea. So using different terrain objectives or different terrain obstacles to kind of keep it in one area so it keeps doing damage is probably a good idea. So moving on to Shiv, I think the best Shiv tip or trick or tech is the right-click movement. Basically, you're right-clicking against a surface, whether it's a wall or something that gives you an indication of pushing you, because the shotgun pushes you with a knockback, like so. Basically, you're using that to your advantage by adding a slide in. So right-click, slide. Right-click, and then sliding. But you want to do it right away so it instantly is moving you. Like so. Then you can add A and D. Just like bunny hopping in any Source game, you don't want to press W when you're doing this, because when you press W, it kills your momentum. So you just want to practice right-clicking into a slide, right-clicking into a slide, and then you can start adding more to it, whether it's a roll and then into a slide to carry even faster momentum. It's all about how fast can you go and how fast can you move around the map to save you some time. Yes, is this a core fundamental feature of Shiv? I would say it's pretty important to learn if you want to play this character consistently. Do you need it, to do extra damage? No. Do you need it to escape and try to catch people? Sure. Is it a must-need every single time? Not necessarily, because you are using a lot of ammo. You're using 3 shots per right-click. So it all depends on what you see as fit, or what you see is impactful or important to your own individual gameplay. It is a good thing to know to try to move around the map quicker for ganks and such. So just being able to do it, I guess, 8 out of 10 times is a good idea. But yeah, it's just right-clicking and then going into a slide. You can also add a roll, like so. And if you're going down, here, like a slope, shooting is also a good idea. Also, depending on where you angle, it will kind of launch you. So if I angle at the ground, for instance, it's going to kind of pop me up a little bit and kind of kill my momentum a little bit. So when you're going down, say, a slope, shooting up towards the sky is definitely a better idea. So I think with Silver, because she is a rather movement-heavy character, understanding the movement of this game is a key fundamental. But I think the big thing that is pretty useful is kind of like the insect is like what I like to call it, if you're familiar with League and you played Lee Sin, where you would essentially, you would go in, you would put a ward behind somebody, and then you would kick them into the tower. Essentially, you can kind of do that. If you press your 2, which is your boot kick, and immediately 180, you kind of can put them into different spots. So if you're trying to gank someone, and you immediately 180 when you're hitting them, it'll throw them back towards your team, essentially. So it's a good idea to practice this if you're looking to play that engaged Silver, that frontline Silver, and you really want to throw off somebody. So understanding that you need to boot kick into immediate 180 once you hit the target is pretty crucial. Honestly, besides that, there isn't too much to know. You can do 3-2 and then go for it as well. Doing that is a really good idea as well. So Ebola into your 2 and then kicking them into your team so they don't have an option to escape is a good idea. Besides that, you can 2 and then Lycan 2 again. So that's another thing, is understanding that once your Lycan is over, you will have another jump available with your boot kick. So essentially, if you really need to escape from somewhere, 2, then you 2 again. Now, when it comes to Sinclair, it's kind of the same idea, but I guess you can when you hit different types of surfaces or bounce pads, you carry the momentum when with your assistant. So if you, for instance, do this, you hit the bounce pad and then you swap, you carry the momentum, and it keeps transferring between the two. So knowing that is a good idea. Also, when you're in lane, for the most part, a good idea is that you're trying to be unpredictable with the Vexing Bolt, your one. So what you want to do is place it, and a good idea is to kind of just throw it up in the air, start fighting, and then bring it down. So that it's harder to see. The enemies have a difficult time to see where the bolt's going, and they just don't know what to expect, where to go. And while it's up top in the air, you have a good option of array of where to place it. The only issue when you do it that way is that you have to kind of predict where the enemy is headed to. That is the only issue, because it has a lot of travel time when it does that. But it is a good idea to kind of do that as well. So with Venator, there isn't a whole lot. The only thing I would keep in mind is you can do the shotgun wall tech, kind of like Shiv. And it's just like jumping off the wall and then shooting it because it gives you some knockback. I mean, it isn't super practical for the most part, because having the shotgun is just such an importance if you want to do anything in this game, because it allows you for a lot of different things. But it's essentially just going up to the wall and shooting and tapping your spacebar or tapping your jump button as like right away, so you get that extra height, that extra momentum. Besides that, there isn't a whole lot of tech. I guess you can shoot, you can. I mean, there isn't a lot. It's just, I guess this shotgun tech is the only thing I can recommend people. Another thing is you can, I guess, press 1 into 4, but there is some input delay. But again, the only thing I would recommend is just the shotgun. Now, there honestly isn't a lot of tech with Viktor, because not a lot of it's practical. But I guess the big thing is understanding your jump start in your 3. So if you're taking a lot of damage and there's no enemies around you, turn off your Aura of Suffering. A lot of people like just forget to turn it off, because you're dealing damage to yourself. So if you want the maximum amount of HP regen, you just want to pop Jumpstart without having your area of suffering up. So you just want to pump Jumpstart. People usually, pop it while Aura of Suffering is going, they're trying to stay alive. But depending on the circumstance, and if they're just outside your radius, just turn off Aura of Suffering. Yeah, you might sacrifice some time because there's a little bit of a delay swapping in between turning on and off. But that little second of delay saves you some time of getting some more HP and whatnot to survive a little bit longer. It's always definitely the best case scenario. And the other thing is just like trying to stick on top of your enemies for as long as possible. So whether it's building like Warpstone, building items like Scourge, for example, move speed, anything that will keep you on top of your enemies is probably the best idea. There isn't like a lot of tech, because they recently changed it to where it doesn't have a, how do I say this? Basically, his jumpstart isn't a full cleanse now. It gives you a 50% debuff resistance. So if you know you're playing against a character like a Pocket, like somebody that's going to throw some type of curse or anything at you in a team fight, popping your jumpstart before that is thrown at you will reduce the effects. The annoying thing is if it's already on you and you pop 2, it doesn't change it. So you have to preemptively jumpstart, so it can be a little tricky of when to time. Now with Vindicta, there isn't a whole lot. I guess you have some niche ideas of, if you dash, start your flight, cancel the flight, you can carry the momentum and you gain an extra speed boost. Like so. Kind of like Abrams shoulder charge, where you're canceling it at the maximum velocity and it carries that movement speed. It can be useful in certain scenarios, like such. I guess some other things is your Krill. You can do a lot of animation cancels. Like so. I guess, it's not like super practical, like you can 2-3, right, to shotgun it, I guess. So you Crow and then 2, and then you can start pumping damage. But I guess the only useful thing is, I guess the flight into an insta cancel into like carrying the momentum. Besides that, there isn't like a ton of niche ideas or tips or tricks. Your shot pierces, which I guess is useful. Like if you get people low enough to execute range. I don't know why I chose this angle, but you can pierce, for example. Besides that, there isn't a ton of like ideas. I guess the only one is really just the flight tech. And you can also kind of do the ZMC as well. But again, it's not super important to care about or worry about that. You playing Vindicta should always be in a pretty safe spot, but I guess understanding this niche movement tech with the flight is very good. So the thing with Viscous, there isn't too much, but once you have max 3 and you're playing against a Graves and they throw down a Tombstone. So if I get Graves.
Well, today is about to get a whole lot more interesting.
Like such. Clear follow. 2 melees destroys it because his 3 counts as that. You can also 3 from a lot of different angles. While on ball, you can cube yourself like such, and then cancel it, and you keep moving around. I mean, there isn't like a ton of tech. There is also some tech with Warpstone. I'm not great at showing that tech, so I don't want to say anything wrong, so I'm going to refrain from talking about that. But essentially it's just like understanding that this character has more to offer with just like spamming 3 and spamming 1, and it has to offer like the fact that you can do a ton of different movement with him, which I think is really cool. But yeah, if you have your own tips with Viscous, do let me know in the comments down below. So I think with a Vyper, I play a lot of Vyper, and I think my biggest tip that I don't see a lot of people use is Lethal Venom in the early stage. When you have Lethal Venom fairly early into the game, when you just start in, this is the item or ability I always recommend getting first. I never recommend 1, I never recommend 3. Why? Because Lethal Venom is such a strong ability, because regardless, you're going to be doing 20 or 140 damage. So if you apply Lethal Venom, like Lurie level 1, you're doing buttloads of damage, like such. And then if you buy extra spirit and you apply it then, because it's considered max venom damage, it's going to be chunking a lot. So in the early stages of lightning phase, when you're just pumping out damage with sliding and shooting, applying lethal venom whenever you can is a great idea because the scaling is insane. So if you can maintain that and understand why this character is so strong in the early game, yeah, she got some nerfs in the recent patch, but honestly, like the character is still stupidly strong, especially in the early stage. If you can get the lethal venom, start getting ahead, the character just snowballs a lot better than most other characters. Some other things, they changed to where you can't use armor piercing with Bola, but you can apply other effects like you press 4, you press your 2, and then you can apply effects like toxic bullets. You can apply things like inhib, siphon, as such, and basically they just come out of petrifying Bola like super chunked. So these are all good ideas. Again, can't use armor piercing anymore. It's been nerfed, or it's been fixed because it was considered a bug, but yeah, you get the idea. Try to use lethal venom in lane as much as possible to be the most annoying Slytherin lady all around. Moving on to Warden, just like Lash, just like Seven, just like Pocket, just like a lot of characters in this game, you can do the ZMC. Like, yeah, it's been showed in other videos. Basically, Control Shift 4, you keep moving, so you carry that momentum. I mean, that's really about it. There isn't a ton of tips with this character besides just like sticking on top of your enemy and just unloading a ton of damage. I guess one big thing is you always want to throw your flask into your cage because they lose 1 stamina, and the idea is to kind of punish them for moving around. You start shooting at somebody, you notice that they use a roll or they use a dash jump, then you want to apply a flask, then you want to press your 3. So that they have the least amount of time to escape from your cage as quick as possible, so that you can just continuously pump damage into them. Besides that, there isn't a whole lot of anything. I mean, you can max 3, buy a slowing hex if you wanted to be that guy, but you are sacrificing some damage if you do 3 into a slowing hex. But yeah, always try to notice someone using a stam, throwing your flask, and then pressing 3. So that you can try to get your best chance of catching them in your cage. So I guess the one thing about Wraith is that you can actually choose the suit you want to. My alternative cast is middle mouse button. So if I have 2 cards and I want to throw the other card, I essentially will press my middle mouse button and then the 1 button. Typically I don't use it, but it is a pretty useful idea if you're in a big fight and you want to throw out a card that does something else. For example, if you're trying to get, trying to get out of a sticky situation, you want to throw your club, or you need the extra damage, so you want to use your Joker, you play alternative cast, then you throw your Joker, and so forth and so on. Pretty cool. Not a lot of people use it, I've noticed, even in Infernus, but I think it is a cool niche part of the kit. Whether it's super practical instead of just rolling your face over all your cards while you're shooting, that's up for debate. But I think in certain scenarios, for an example, like the early stages of the laning phase, having the ability to do this is a good idea. The thing with a Yamato is that the same thing as ZMC, like such, control shift off. You can also roll dash, slide down. It's always a good idea when it's items or abilities that carry momentum to use them in such manner. So if you're coming off of the zip and you're trying to do a huge amount of damage to try to catch somebody, it's just control shift off. Another cool ability is that they actually added to where you can cancel your grapple, so you can use it to propel yourself. So like such, I go this, I cancel, if it'll actually work. Sometimes it doesn't. And then you do a little B-hop after. So this is using the momentum of your 2 to go way further. It doesn't always work, but it does work. That makes sense. So again, pressing 2, and then at the apex of the movement, so the highest velocity, you cancel to go further. It's like the idea. So useful in certain cases. Again, whether it's practical or not, it's up for debate. Again, control shift 1, definitely a good idea to think about. Pretty standard. I think most players that play this character should know about this. And yeah. Also, when you're lane, always looking to right click people is a good idea. You only want to do left click if you're trying to confirm a soul. Otherwise, you're harassing with your right click because it does a lot more damage. So yeah, definitely try to consider that. And I do want to quickly say, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, I can't thank you all enough. I've been putting a lot of work into these Deadlock videos. I've been having a blast, and I can't thank you all enough for all of the recent support. You guys have been actually insane coming back to the game Deadlock. I'm hoping this game really takes off, and I bet it does. It's pretty addicting if you haven't given it a shot already. Like I said, if you like this type of content or want to see more, do me a favor, hit the like button. Of course, subscribe to the channel if you're new. I hope you have a great and safe day, and well, I'll catch you in the next one.